Hey guys, what's going on? It's been a while. I think I showed this off April 1st. I demoed this concept. But we're going to be doing a tutorial this round on uh on drawing textures. Now, for anybody following that character tutorial series, we kind of got up to that point to where we did like UV mapping and super baseline texturing. This one's gonna kind of really set in all of just the drawing texture aspect. So in the description, there's going to be a link to a file that you can download. It's going to be a zip that contains a Photoshop file, an Sprite file, and then of course the Blender file. So the Photoshop and the Sprite file will both have this template on that's already UV mapped for you, ready to go. And obviously, like with Photoshop, unless you do have a plugin that lets you do the live updating for that, um, that won't necessarily work. You'll have to re-update the texture every time. But for Sprite, if you're using per-band base like we have been for our pixel art style, then then it should be no problem for you. The other thing is if you're doing a Photoshop file style of this, and by the way, you can open those in Clip Studio if you like that program as an alternative. But this tutorial is only going to really cover um, how to do pixel art textures, and I'm going to talk about some of the tech like anti-aliasing and shape theory and stuff like that, and how to really work with both limited palette in mind and some of those tools that we use for pixel art specifically. So as far as digital art goes, this isn't really going to cover like full on like a big large scale digital art. This is just going to be pixel art. But it doesn't mean that some of these ideas can't apply to that as well. Like, you know, how we work out the shape theories, especially, and how we work out palette too, since that can really help you simplify your workflow for a complex piece that might be in full digital. Either way, let's get the show on the road and talk about this a little bit. So I've already done all the UV map for you, and it's set. It's set in stone and ready to go. And whenever you load up your Blender file, this is what you're gonna get. You're gonna be able to see the entire template laid out for you. And I created the template, I created the model so that you don't have to do anything. If you want to poke at the UVs, because we're gonna see coming up that with odd shaped objects like this, where all of the vertexes aren't unit accurate as far as their distance away from each other. Um, you will notice some warping, but that's going to be completely unnoticeable from a good distance away, like this distance away. And otherwise, it shouldn't be a problem. But once again, like do what you want with this. The last thing I want to say before we really dive in is if, when you make yours, have fun with it. Put whatever design you want into it as we go, because this tutorial is just going to be making a base Game Boy Advance texture. It's not even going to be like we're not going to super personalize it here. That's going to be up to you. When you do, tag me in it. I want to see it. I want to share it because you guys, I've already seen some of the cool stuff that you guys do, and I would love to continue that. All right, hold on. Let me set up. Now we're not gonna do the magnifier for this one because it's not really necessary. I really don't want to make anybody motion sick with the brushwork, since we're not going to be operating in Blender, and we're not going to be using more complex tools where we're going to have to figure out where we're going. So the first thing I want to do is I want to start like blocking out this entire set, and that's what we're gonna do is we're gonna pick a color. And for me, I like blues and cyans and everything in between, so that's what I'm going to choose. We're just gonna go from there. So whenever you get this file and you open it, it's gonna have this template out on another one, and there's also gonna be a reference texture. It's gonna be this one right here. So if I turn this off. And so this, obviously this is like the classic Game Boy um, Game Boy Advance style that you can refer back to if you need help. But how you execute it doesn't have to match this one to one. And you'll even see that whenever I get to it, I'm not gonna match that too close. In fact, I'm gonna more stick to our template going on here. So I'm gonna pick two colors. One for my first shade and one for my base tone. And I'm just gonna kind of, with a darker color first, get all these buttons out of the way and anything else that might need it. And we're just gonna block it out, like I said. So a good part of this is kind of teaching the importance of like making yourself a template like this whenever you do UV map and you want to start texturing, but you don't exactly know how to go about it, how to get started. I strongly suggest, yeah, make yourself a little template based on the UV. It's a bit more work for sure, but if you're just learning out, like learning how to set up and start all of this stuff, then it's gonna really help you. So here I want to start, and I want to be a little bit like conscious about where some of my lines line up. So I'm using this little mini window over here. Hopefully it's big enough for you guys to see. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over and check to see where certain pixels are. And if I feel like they're not in the right spot, then I'm going to go back and brush them, because I like this one right here. I want this to line up with this line right here. But otherwise, we're just going to kind of freehand a lot of stuff. Now this is one of those things where even though we have like defined boundaries for where the UV ends and it's just blank space, go outside of those lines, like give yourself room to stretch. That way, as you make your piece, it'll look good. So the first bit of tech I want to talk about, especially with symmetrical objects, is try and draw it like that, with the symmetry in mind. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to color in this half, and I'm going to ignore these whenever I get to it. And I'm going to see like certain parts that might be a little bit difficult to do. So like this one right here, I can do this and mirror it and bring it over here and see where it lines up. See if I can get that same shape. Let's see. There we go. And then what we'll do is we'll check it out over on the other side of the model. And yeah, we can see that line goes right there, right across from that one. And that's where we want that one to terminate. So yeah, don't be afraid to copy and paste with symmetry. If anybody out there tells you, "Oh, you're not a real artist if you copy and paste," don't believe them. Like, don't draw the same thing a billion times over unless you really want to learn how to get that line work like down into muscle memory. Feel like don't feel discouraged to just straight up, only draw half of it or a quarter of it, because the rest of it's just going to be the same. And that mainly works in pixel art a lot because we get these base shapes like this bezel right here, and so it's a bit easier for us to just do that. Digital art, it might be a bit different. Oop. It's like it's fighting with us a little bit. Yeah, that UV, that might just be a pre-bam base having a hard time updating. But either way, yeah, just take it easy and don't stress about it. Now, if you're somebody with a weak mind's eye, or you can't visualize some of the stuff that you're working on, which happens, like there are tons of times where, for me, like my mind's eye is absolutely like asleep, out out to lunch. I cannot visualize anything at all. That's perfectly fine. That's perfectly normal. And even if you don't have a mind's eye, that's also perfectly like fine and normal. But for those of you who want to be artistically creative and want to learn how to create stuff on your own, one of the biggest things that I can tell you to help out with that kind of stuff, is try and go out and get inspired, and try and find things that you want to draw, that you would like to draw. You know, for me, I really like retro tech, and so I've got like a drawer filled with various retro things. Like I've got Game Boys, Game Boy Advance, I've got old phones, lots of dumb things like that. And when I'm ready to make a model or something, I take it out and I look at it. And I turn it around in my hand and then I start modeling while I look at it. And that's kind of one of the biggest things, in my opinion, that really helps get over that barrier. So if you're feeling a little blocked, like art blocked, go grab yourself a tangible reference, something that you can hold in your hand. Obviously that doesn't help whenever you're doing character design, unless you really want to go find a model. I mean, be my guest, that's a thing. That's actually a thing that people do, is they'll hire models so that they can figure out how they want to go about go about doing a piece. But the same thing applies. It's just go find yourself a physical representation of what you want to get made, and go get it even if it's broken. Like, I have several Polaroid cameras that I really want to model out, and I've actually had these for a long while just because of family. Let's try and keep with our color. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do the grates right here, but I'm just going to do like super basic, just so that I know where they are, and then I'll worry about them later. But yeah, I have a Polaroid camera that doesn't work, and I'll pull that thing out and I'll do the exact same thing. I'll twist it and turn it around and see how it looks. That's a good start. So let's keep that going, and do the baseline for everything else. Then we'll do a detail pass, and we'll start talking about anti-aliasing. But as far as things go, like, look at the shape language. Like, we just have these kind of like almost skewed rectangles up here for the arms. The Game Boy shape, we just kind of follow this nice flow. And so, like, go look up a picture of a Game Boy Advance, or if you have one still, or maybe you've just gotten one, take it out. Like I said, turn it around, get a good idea of what it looks like, and try and replicate it over here. Now, the model isn't exactly one to one. Obviously, we're sticking a low poly, but that doesn't mean that it can't be helpful. So for this one, what I want to do is I actually want to find us a darker color. So look, our next step down, maybe darker than that. There we go. That's gonna work. And for the back, we're gonna do it in this darker shade. Now, all of the low poly that I teach is baked lighting, and there's a big reason for that. Actually, that's a little weird, the UV. So we'll just mirror that. But there's a big reason for that. It's an aesthetic that I like, for starters, and second off, it is there's a technical reason behind why they baked in all of their lighting back in the day, and that was just because it would save you computational time, especially on the PlayStation, which was slow as dirt. You know, all your favorite games were, trust me, barely chugging on that thing. Um, but yeah, like I was saying, um, stuff like baked lighting is just where we draw in the shadows on the texture. So I know that this is the back. Obviously, it says back. So we're going to choose a darker color because we want this side to be shaded. We always want the front to be lit. There are moments where might want to reverse that or something like that. But baked lighting really kind of helps you fit that aesthetic. And if you've seen my demo on the pixel lighting system, then you'll you'll probably wonder like, oh, why are why are you baking lighting if you use a new fancy lighting system for Unreal or Unity or whatever that does all that stuff for you? And my reasoning behind it is simply they look good together. So they're the only reason I have for baked lighting is that it's an aesthetic. It's not a technical thing these days, but it used to be way back when. So I am blocking out some of these other shapes a little bit better, like this battery cover. Before we fill that, let's do this. That should be fine. Actually, not going to do those edges. We're going to do something a little bit rounded. Yeah, if you see a hard edge and you're just like, that doesn't feel right, you know, for your vibe, don't be afraid to round it out. So that's what I'm going to do over here, is just give it a little bit more of a rounder vibe by cutting off the corners. Fill that in, then fill, and that looks good. See? That fits well. Well, there's something over here that I want to kind of break out. And this is because if you turn around your Game Boy model, you'll see that we have this kind of step, and this is kind of the back part that extrudes out for the cartridge slot. We almost want to separate that out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with just this line across. I'm going to see where it goes. All right, so we cut across a little too far right there. So we're just going to step it up until we start to see it on the other side. And the reason why I want to do this is because I want to try and add in an effect in pixel art that we call ambient occlusion. So if you're in a pretty like evenly lit room, look at the corner of the walls and you'll notice it's a little bit darker. Like you can tell the seam between a wall and another wall, or you can tell this you can see the seam between a wall and a ceiling, you know. And that's just because light, as it bounces off of surfaces, corners specifically, it gets kind of trapped in there, and we don't see it. It dissipates, and all we see is a tiny little bit of shade. And so that's a really important key element in pixel art, especially if you're doing baked lighting, is to introduce this. Now, even if you're not really doing baked lighting too, like if you're making models, whether it's digital or pixel art actually, you can use this method to really kind of bump up your model. Now, they do make shaders that handle ambient occlusion too. And I believe Unity has some default shaders. I believe so does Unreal. So see what your engine has and go from there. So it looks like our right side, which would be this side right here, we just got a little bit of weirdness going on. I actually like the right side a little bit better than the left. Let me see what I can do. Whoa, is this flipped? Is this actually flipped? Oh yeah, it is, huh? That's funny. Usually I would have flipped this. So let's work this out. So this looks pretty fine right here, though. You want to cut this just a bit for those, trying to make room for the shoulder buttons here. So I've recorded this tutorial, oh my gosh, probably a maximum of 3 or 4 times since April 1st. I did the teaser. I did a demo run. If you're part of the Discord, I don't like. There's not a lot of activity in the Discord. I usually don't recommend it to anybody just because it's really a weirdly hard project to try and figure out. which I'm sure there's somebody out there who's like, that's their utmost expertise is Discord. Looks like one more pixel, maybe? Yeah. And then I also did it for some some private art groups where a lot of like art friends and mentors are, just to see. And I didn't really get very many back. I think I got like 2 or 3 Game Boy Advances, and all those people gave me absolutely amazing advice on what I should do to build onto this tutorial series. So I'm pretty stoked about finally like sitting down and figuring out how to share this with you guys. There we go. And I know we're like 20 minutes in now. So if this wasn't apparent before, your quick little disclaimer is this is going to be a very let's art together kind of stream today, or kind of video. So one of the big things I want to stress is, if you have any questions at all as you're going through this process, something doesn't make sense, because it's always going to happen. There's going to be something I don't explain all the way, or something that just doesn't click. Feel free to drop a comment in, uh, you know, drop a comment down below. Tell me what your thoughts are. Tell me what you're thinking and what you're stuck on. It could be anything from I can't get pre-band bass to work, all the way down to why did you do this? And that's just because I'm gonna miss some things, and I want to kind of use this as a sort of learn how to teach a little bit better what's going on. Do we have a selection? Oh, oh. But yeah, learn how to teach a little bit better type of vibe. That a way we can make better tutorials. And there we go, that's blocked out. So we just have to block out the sides, the buttons, and the top and the bottom. Now the buttons are going to be pretty easy. In fact, like blocking them out is literally going to be doing 90% of their work. And you'll see like we've got this kind of um gradient. It's probably barely noticeable, but there's actually step 1, 2, 3 down. And so what I want to do is I want to color these like with 3 shades all the way down. This is going to be our edges for our buttons. And so we can be a little bit lazy about this. We can even fill in these with a solid color. In fact, yeah, let's actually go through it and do all of the color we need for these right ahead of time. So just fill this out. That way, all we have to do is just, there we go. Actually, before we do that, let's drop a couple of, let's drop our detail first. So letters are pretty easy to do in pixel art. And what you're going to want to do is probably position your model so that you can see it a little bit better. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start here with the D-pad. And let's see. There we go. Like, dang. Super easy on that one. I didn't expect that one to land perfectly. And you'll notice like UVs, especially like, we're seeing this UV export on here, aren't always going to line up right. That's just going to happen sometimes. Like I find whenever you bring all this stuff over, Ace Bright's just got this weird way of offsetting whenever it's at this pixel scale. Well, Ace Bright and Blender, but that's no fault of yeah, that's no fault of Blender at all. Let's do the A and B button. I'm going to do it very similar to how they do it on the GBA, where they're kind of offset a little bit over. See, I need to see back there just a bit more. Let's actually bring this over. I'm probably going to bump that A over too. That might be aligned. No, I think the B UV is over by one. Let's go with that. I'm overthinking it. That typical artist thing. Let's see how it looks. That looks good. We see like you wouldn't notice it, but with the UV I've set up, this L-shaped gradient down here becomes the ambient occlusion for our D-pad. And yeah, our A and B buttons sit pretty well. If you notice that the button doesn't quite sit on the shade, try looking at it at different angles. And if you feel like it still could use some work, go in there and either move those around or move the buttons around. Like go into Blender and move the buttons up and down or left and right until they sit where you like them. But for me, I think this'll work. All right, let's get those the side bumpers. So this is gonna kind of define where we do our shade split. Now on the top and the bottom, we actually have these plastic mold seams that I've kind of laid out for you guys. That's going to be what we're going to use to define where the light kind of drops down a step. So keep that in mind. Let's actually wait before we do any of that. I'm getting ahead of myself. So for this, what I want to do is try and get a good placement for the bumper. And then we're just going to bring it all the way up like that. And then we're going to find about the halfway mark. So maybe about right there. Yeah. And then for the rest of it, what we're going to do is we're going to do our next step down. And I've left this center pixel. I'll explain that in a bit. Since that's going to be our seam, what we're going to do is the same thing we did over here with the ambient occlusion line, but this is going to be the seam for our plastic. And then of course we can use that for a bumper right here too. We should really be checking it out on the model. And it looks like we're about 1 pixel off on that seam. So once again, this is kind of why I say like rotate the model as you work so you can see if these things are working fine. In fact, we'll do a little bit of detail and we'll kind of round this out just a bit by pooling some of the darker right here and then having it get a little bit more intense along this side. Just like that. That looks pretty good. I might want to work it a little bit more though. There we go. I think that works. All right, all we have left is the top and the bottom, and then we can detail. So the best way I can describe stuff like that is think about like a shade direction and which way you want your light to come from. So for me, it's kind of um, obviously facing forward, but kind of a little bit on the top. And so that's why we might have this rounded part. If I wanted to go with a more dynamic palette, I would actually step this up 1/2 step right down here for the bottom. That way, whenever it reaches this, we've got a light, we've got a medium, and we've got a dark. But I want to keep the palette as simple as possible. That way, as we learn, it's not too like intense to take on. I'm gonna grab my two darks. So first my shade color and my seam color. And I'm going to start with the seam color, and I'm just going to kind of make out some of the shapes for this top piece right here. I'm going to avoid our link port for a moment. Oh yeah, let's do this in the dark too. So these little holes right here for things, accessories to clip on. If you are unfamiliar with the anatomy of a Game Boy Advance. So let's line ourselves up so that we can take a look at what's going on. Now, by the way, like a little quick, I guess, Blender trick is, you know, when you see the little star in the corner, which is going to be real hard for me to do because this is already a separate window. Yeah, it looks like it's not. There it is. Yeah, when you see the little like plus sign in the corner, if you hold shift and click it, it will actually create a little separate viewport for you. So like if you're working on a laptop or if you're a one monitor gang, because trust me, I rocked that for the longest time. Um, then this might help you a lot actually. So let's actually go from here to here. That way, whenever I do it here to here on this side, it should line up. And looking at it, it looks like it does. So I'm going to use this darker color to kind of mark out where the cartridge slot is. Yeah, I just want to make sure the spacing's good. And that looks pretty nice. So that's going to really help out our ambient occlusion. Oop. So if you plan on using this in a set that you want to light yourself, you can just do it all in this solid color. You don't have to do the same thing we're doing. But I still recommend doing the ambient occlusion yourself. Because even if you have it in scene, like in your shader that you plan on using, it will kind of help push it up that little extra. It will almost play along with that. And you'll get a nice, a nicer result because of it. There we go. What I might do is this darker line right down here is I might get rid of that. I think that's part of our shader actually. That's part of our shader. That's part of our set. There we go. Yeah, that looks good. Much better. Let's round out the bottom too, just for a little bit more whimsical feel. What I might do is actually shrink it down. All right, let's get that top done. So what I'm going to do for right now is I'm just going to split the L and R. Just like this. And I want to make sure that everything lines up. So this could probably be pushed back 1 pixel. Yeah. So instead, right there. But yeah, I want to split it in half at where we set our plastic seam. I'm going to run this across real quick. That shouldn't show up on our model. And I'm going to actually put that L down. But I'm going to choose to use the darker color. And this is mainly so that I can see it. And I can edit that later whenever I see fit. So I'm actually going to put it a little bit closer to the edge over here. And then what I'll probably do from here is I'll probably round this out. But I won't pass this line. This will be our... That'll be our little like safety. Yeah, let's do this. So 3 wide and then 2 for the bottom. Oops, wrong color. There we go. That looks pretty nice. So this is already going to look pretty good by the time we get... I grabbed the wrong color. Yeah, this is already going to look pretty good by the time we get done with just the flats. And that might be a stopping point for you. It's all up to you on what level of detail you want, how you like your art. You know, that's one of the biggest things that I try and convey as I teach is that it's once again, it's your art, it's not mine. So I always want people to feel like as they follow these tutorials, they don't have to make what I'm making, but instead just take my example of the use of tools and tech and apply it to whatever you want to make. Oops, we didn't do the bottom of that link port just yet. So we'll fill that. We'll fill these two as well. And then the link port's going to be pretty easy. And we're going to make the little inside. This is the part that holds the pins. We're going to make that black. And then we'll make the interior of it this color. So you might want to go lighter if you feel like it, but I think I'll be fine there. And then just because most ports that you see on consoles or even USBs, they got, like, you can see the metal jacket sticking out a little bit, so we'll do that. And that'll be fine for right now. In fact, we'll go up here and grab this so that we can set in the cartridge slot. The cartridge slot is really similar to, I mean, in reality, like as far as the physical connector goes, they're pretty much the same. They're just a rectangle that holds pins. It depends on if they're going to have it on both sides or a single side or, you know, any of that jazz. So just kind of keep that in mind. But it's that whole like shape language of just, you know, whenever you look at something like a connector port, in reality, it's just a rectangle that, you know, has either little rectangles or little squares in them as far as pixels go, or even little dots in them if you're doing digital. So once again, we're going to do that copy paste tech. And we're going to take our L button and do the same thing over here for our R. Our L is actually going to be a good keystone for us to use. So I think this might be a little bit further. So let's take a look at it. We could probably push it back one. Yeah. Here, let's do this the smart way. Grab this like that, and then push it back. And then for the L, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do that first. Then I'm going to draw out my R. Try and make it the same length as... There we go. Yeah, that looks pretty nice. And then the bottom. So once again, following that whole like shape language thing, like think about what the volume wheel is. When you look at it straight on, once again, it's going to be a rectangle. What I'm going to use is this kind of darker gray. So introducing a new color. Same thing for the headphone jack, is we're going to see a little bit of the jacket, which is usually plastic, instead of metal like a USB. And then, inside the port, which will probably just be black. And then once again, same for the power switch too. The power switch I like to think of more as a pill shape. So it kind of looks like this. And then the inside of it, or the top, that little nub, is like a bit of a step up on the lightness. Let's find the right color. There we go. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And so there's a little bit of gnarling too on our volume wheel, just so that we can get a good thumb on it. I'm going to think about the shading. So if I want to portray it being a little bit round, I might do this. Or I might try and use the black on the edges right here. And then for here, it's going to be the top. But if we go down to it and look at it, it's going to be the bottom. And so this will kind of give it, once again, that round shape, but also that like pill shape, just like the switch. But it didn't start out that way. It started out as a rectangle. And so that's just another one of those like understanding the shape language and how to apply it. So that's some like poking into detail. And I figured right now would be a good time to start transitioning over into talking about that kind of stuff. So detail is always kind of one of those tough ones for pixel art because there's a lot of tech in it that does not apply to digital at all whatsoever. Mainly like anti-aliasing or sometimes even baked lighting. But really, it's the technique of like anti-aliasing and using, the basic shape of a pixel, a square, to convey shapes that you want to show off. And so that can kind of get a lot of people a little hung up trying to figure out pixel art. You know, how do I uh, how do I learn this tech? How come it takes so long? All of this and that. And that's just going to be one of those things about art is art takes time and it takes quite a bit of effort to put it in, a little bit of practice. And so us explaining about it today and kind of breaking it down is really the key. Let's see if I can do this because I got to flip this upside down and invert it essentially. Uh, V, ooh, looks like we're getting it. O, L, dot, there we go. And then we'll do like the old cell signal. I'm probably dating myself with that one. The bars. I don't know. Do phones have bars these days? Mine just says whether it has 4G or not, or 5G. So I doubt we can fit the word phones here for headphones, so we're going to draw it in instead. So that's another thing that you will run into in design as well, is sometimes some things can be solved just by drawing symbols instead of uh, instead of trying to force anything. So here, what I'm going to do, because there's no way I'm going to be able to fit power right here, at least not without making it make no sense. We're just going to go P, O, and W. Dot, just like that. Let's do the outside for that. Might need to shrink that P down. Round it out. We'll, yeah, that'll be fine. And we'll see how that looks. Looks pretty good. But yeah, like I was saying, explaining all of that stuff can be a bit hard. And so that's why we're stepping in here and breaking down like why we do it and whatnot. So how to like I mentioned with the volume knob, how we convey that roundness. Now, if we abstract it too far, it really is just shapes stacked on other shapes. So we're going to do this right like this. Fill in all these spots. There we go. That looks good. And then we're going to kind of validate it over with our model. Yeah, this is looking real nice. So we're about at the 45, 46 minute mark. And we've basically completed our GBA. Wait here. So now we're going to talk about detail and anti-aliasing and kind of how it works. So here is going to be my crash course in how to work anti-aliasing. You're going to need 2 colors. Technically, you need 4 colors. Absolute, like, in reality, your minimum is 3 colors to perform a good anti-alias. A baseline, a base color that you're aliasing into, and an in-between. But in this case, we're going to use our shading as our anti-alias, and things like this right here, you know, this bezel is going to be our example. So what I like to do first is I'm going to go across, and you can do it either or, either color. I'm going to go across about 2/3 of the way. Now, if you reach something where it's just one, or actually, let's do this with our lighter. That one's going to be make the next step make a little bit more sense. If you get here to where it's either going to be half or full, just do the full, or just do the half. You want at most 2/3. And we're going to do the same thing that we've been talking about, which is we're going to mirror our anti-aliasing over here. Another thing I want to talk about is whenever you get to something like this, it's still the same concept. It's 2/3 of the whole line. We try and split it in half. So, you know, if there's a halfway mark, like let's say right here, you know, do 1/3 of not shaded right there and 1/3 right there. And then the same vibe down here. Try and hit that 2/3. And of course you can drop this down to you want if you want. If you don't want the anti-aliasing that hard. The next thing is our second color now. For steep drop-offs like the bezel, I don't want to do this because it's just going to kind of bloat it and start changing the shape of it a bit. But I do want to do it for here. And so for this, it's really about half the line. Now if you get here and you have these single dots, go into the bezel, go into the darker side with your next step down. But yeah, try and fill at most half. If you can't, then, you know, step it back by 1. That's okay. And then for this one, we're actually going to do it right there. And we're just going to step off and see how it looks. Yeah, it looks a little weird. It looks like it's kind of forcing this side to be a little bit out more than it needs to. And once again, if you need to step it a little bit further like we did here, go ahead and do that. Don't be afraid to give it a little bit more space if it needs it. And there you go. That's your crash course in anti-aliasing. It's pretty simple. It doesn't take a ton of effort to do. But for a lot of people, it can be a bit intimidating because it's a lot. But if you limit yourself on the number of colors that you use for it, you can go pretty far with it. Like I said, you can go an absolute minimum of 1 color if you set it right smack dab in between. How I pick colors can vary. Like this palette right here that we're using is my Capcom palette, which I'll probably provide. I'll provide that palette in the file for anybody who wants to use something a little bit fixed. It's not complete. It's just something that I threw together for various whatever. But it's a good starting point for understanding, okay, like this is uh this is the style, to match the saturation level. So from there, we're going to kind of keep on going with our anti-aliasing. And for these buttons, we want to do the same. But I want to start off with the dark. And this is going to kind of be like the edge of the plastic right here. And this is going to really, really separate out the buttons. Now, if you feel like it's too dark, once again, don't be afraid. Well, I like down here. Yeah, yeah. I can't believe I nailed that first try. Um, yeah, just step through it. Try and cut that down a little bit more. Try and get that, once again, that 2/3. And of course, like I said, it is all subjective to how you view it. So if you feel like you need more, add more. If you feel like you need less, add less. And if you feel like you're just stuck and you don't know what you're doing, then step back from it for a bit. Take it easy. So for these like little grills, I guess, for the speaker, I'm just gonna put a dark on one side and then this on the other. And I could probably like carry it out further and just kind of create this like cradle, if you will. And all this does is this just kind of helps make it look a little less like it's just straight punched in. It's kind of got this weird little carved out effect. And of course, copy paste is your friend. Just like in low poly, art is a lot of just repeating the same process over and over again. And that's okay. Like you don't need to be flinging wild and crazy mechanics left and right. Not that it isn't cool to do some of those things. Sometimes it can be fun to goof off and do some of that stuff. But at the end of the day, a lot of these skills are repeatable, and that's kind of one of the nice things to know about it is once you get that pattern down, you can stick to it. I think that's one of the things that people kind of don't grasp at first is that it is these kind of repeated patterns. We need to push that up by 1 pixel over here. So that'd be up here. Let's copy paste this real quick. So it looks like these tutorials are going to be about an hour, or this one in particular is going to be about an hour. I've tried everything to bring it down, and well, it hasn't been working the absolute best, to say the least. But that is fine. Sometimes you do got to let a tutorial be. So we're going to kind of fill out the wells for these buttons a little bit better. That way anything that sticks out that looks like it's a little bit more into the plastic, it's got a little bit more authentic of a feel. So that's another thing about art, and especially art that's like low poly and pixel art, is try and exaggerate stuff. If there's detail there and it's noticeable, but it's not the hugest issue. It's not the hugest thing in the world. Make it that way. Make it a big deal. Have fun with it. That's what I say. So we're gonna do the same here. We're gonna try and try and get a good design going for this. That link port's going to be interesting to get to. For this L and R button. So I kind of want to make it a little bit like flat up here. If you've ever seen a Game Boy Advanced L and R button, they've got this kind of flat landing pad for your finger to rest on. There we go, that looks good. That almost looks exactly like it. And so I want to kind of emphasize that a little bit with this right here. There we go. And then what we can do, just like our like we did with the L button with this one, we can really just kind of copy paste the shape we made right over here. Try and get it to snap in. So let's see how that looks. That looks pretty good. We got a little bit of an issue right here, as it be sometimes, but otherwise, actually, yeah, let's bring that out like that. The link port is going to be basically the same as the cartridge slot. The only difference is the cartridge slot doesn't have a little jacket for us. We're going to anti-alias the edge of that, and then same thing here for the metal jacket on that. And then for the interior, we're going to do our gold pins. So I'm going to look for a color that I feel like will match it the best. I don't want it to be too bright though. Yeah, that'll do right there. The link port has 6 pins. The cartridge slot has a lot of pins. I don't know. I think it's like 32, maybe, something like that. I know it holds an address bus, a data bus, and a control bus, but I don't know how many pins that makes up. So I am sure this will be fine. So that little detail I spewed there was just kind of like information about the model that I already know. You know, so no, so that kind of goes into the second thing, is that know the model you're working in. You don't need to know a ton of mega detail. I'm just a big retro game nerd, so that's how I know. But knowing some little basic information does help. Bring those up just a bit for anti-aliasing. There we go. Then we're gonna do no, not that color. We'll just do it in this color then. The latch for our battery cover. And then a little bit of text for right here. We'll probably use, I don't know, this might work. And we'll just make a little fake Nintendo logo. Let's bring it down. And you can, like, because this is the label, you can kind of customize this the way you want. I believe there's a barcode up here too. I'm actually going to just put it on this label. I'm not going to worry too much about what's in the right spot or what's not. So I'm not aiming for total authenticity, but you might be, and that's okay. And we're just gonna put some fake words down, almost like it's a little FCC label. For us, that's the label required for electronics, so that they don't spew random radio signals out into the environment and do things. So, you know, that might be dependent on the country that you live in. So yeah, we'll do something like that. That looks fine. Same as before, a little bit anti-aliasing on the edge, but we're going to take this one all the way across. We're going to dig into it just a little bit, at least by 1 pixel. Let's take a look at how that's turning out. That looks good on the back end. Let's go up here because I forgot to do that. There we go. That looks a lot nicer. Much nicer. I'll use the screw hole as my marker. Shift H. There we go. And let's see if that wraps this guy up on our detail. I think it does. So yeah, about an hour. Oh man, I swear, I've tried my absolute hardest to get this out and done. So when you're done, you should remove this reference texture, right? As soon as you draw into it, it'll update. You can put whatever label you want down here, of course, on the chin. And you can put whatever game screen you want here, or if you've been following like our UV mapping tutorial, you should already know how to handle this. But if you want, you can go all the way over um into Blender, go into your edit mode, make sure we have the object selected, and you can get into the object. See if I can't select the screen underneath the screen, if you will, and you'll see it's a square down here, right there. And you can make that as big or as small as you want. You can even put a different shader or a different material, I should say, not a shader, different material on it, and put whatever game you want there. Or you can try and cram a game in right here. I just did this because this texture is actually scalable. You can make it as big or as small as you want. So if you feel like you want to upscale it, keep that in mind. And then of course the cutout, like the front cutout, like I said, will disappear once you remove that template. So this finishes our Game Boy Advance. Patreon names should already be scrolling if they're not scrolling now. Big thanks, guys. I'm sorry this is taking so long. It was there was a lot that went on between travel, between getting the YouTube creator. This might be a little late to say this, but if you got ads in the middle of it, I'm sorry. Please use an ad blocker. I have not gone into the ad control panel that YouTube has just yet, but I will get in there so that we can get those ads out of the way. For any of you guys who can't use ad block for whatever reason, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I'll catch you guys in the next one where we'll be doing this again, but on a character. So that should be a little bit interesting. If I missed anything, please leave a comment. Don't be afraid to give me a little bit of criticism as well. Always keep it nice and polite as usual, because you guys have been really good at that. Like I'm not being sarcastic either. You guys have been absolutely lovely, and all of you guys help make every tutorial, every following tutorial a lot better. So, peace out. We will catch you in the next one. And yeah, show me your Game Boys when you're done.